Merriment Makers. I want to try something a little bit different for the first episode of 2026. Happy New Year. This is not a New Year, New You kind of thing and not like a motivational speech. This is more of a question that I have been thinking about, and I think it's a very useful one, especially if you are feeling kind of weird about your goals this year, or you're tired of setting them, or you're even suspicious of this entire process. So the question is, what if you only had 6 months or a year left to live, but your life stayed basically the same? You still go to work or have school or the kids and your family stuff. You still have to pay your bills. You still have all of your routines that you do pretty much. It's the same life, but you just know that you have this end point in mind. And I want to be really clear that I'm not trying to make this happen, manifest it, whatever. This is not me planning for this, hoping for this, or I don't know, whatever. It's just a thought experiment, a mental gym exercise, if you will. When I'm saying this, I'm not trying to get us to jump into a fear mode. I just want us to notice what happens when we do this, what we think about, what shifts in our bodies and our brains, even just a little bit. Because most versions of this question, I don't think work. When we say, what if you only had a month or a year or 6 months to live, whatever, we jump and we make these drastic changes and decisions. We're like, I'd quit everything, I'd spend all my money, I would travel, I'd finally live, da-da-da-da-da. I don't think that's super helpful. It's escaping and it's like burning every bridge. But I think this version with the and you still have your structure of life and your responsibilities keeps you in reality. So today I'm going to walk you through what I think this can look like, how to use it in a helpful way, and then give you 4 steps to kind of help you use this in real time for yourself. Not just for making goals, but really for helping you prioritize this as you prioritize what is actually essential in your own life. So as I'm recording this, I am 37 years old, which is an age that definitely sneaks up on you. Before you're 35, you're like, oh, it's cool, I'm all right. But then we start thinking about midlife, if you're realistic. I always thought midlife was around like 50, but statistically, it's a lot earlier than that. Late 30s, early 40s, because the American average lifespan is a little bit before 80. And this is assuming that you don't have anything unexpected happen with no accidents or illnesses or anything random, you know? So I'm right there at middle age. I mean, I'm also not taking into account that maybe I could live to be 100, or we figure out science that can keep us alive forever. Who knows? But as of right now, this is pretty much middle age. I've had enough health scares to really know what it feels like when time stops being so abstract. You know, I remember what it was like when I thought I had a brain tumor and I thought maybe I would only have a month of my mental faculties left. There was this strange moment of panic. But then it created all this clarity. I was so aware all of a sudden that I could see everything so clearly. I was so aware of how I was spending my days, my hours, my moments, and how it wasn't aligned with what I really loved in my life. It wasn't completely wrong, but it just wasn't right. I had my cancer scare that was only less than a year and a half ago. And the worst case scenario wasn't actually immediate, you know? The worst case scenario was that I would maybe die in 5 years. So that was when the time was really stretched out. Years that I might die, but my structure of life was going to stay the same. And that did something really different to me. That made me realize that even a longer timeline doesn't really change the question. It just really makes it easier to avoid. You get this like similar clarity of, oh God, I'm not doing it. I'm not living the life that I want to be living. But then it's easier to go back into your version of autopilot. And ultimately, this is what we're all dealing with, right? Because we really don't know how long we have. We could live just until tomorrow, 5 more years, 30 more. We don't know. The time that we have, we just act like we do know, but we don't. And there's research behind this, but I don't even think we need the research to recognize it, honestly. When people become aware in a real way that time is finite, because it is for all of us, their priorities do shift. And it's really honest and clear to not just them, but the people around them. If you've ever been around someone who was really sick and knew it, and they had accepted it, you probably saw what that was like. They've stopped sweating the small stuff and they get really selective and they start savoring everything so much more. The way that they kiss is like it's the last time. The way that they drink something, it's like it's the last sip. And it's not this forced gratitude, toxic positivity kind of way. It's this sensory presence kind of thing. And it's just love, man. They're not rushing the same way. If they were planning something like a wedding, they wouldn't be as irritated about those little things that come up in these decisions. It wouldn't be a bridezilla kind of a moment, right? They would be so blessed and grateful at the opportunity to make those decisions. They wouldn't be trying to optimize their life, or maybe they would, I don't know, but it would be in a different way. They would be experiencing it and inhabiting their life, right? And I think that's really my goal here with goals. The presence and savoring and energy and priority that I want to bring into perspective here. When you make your goals, when you think about what it is that you want out of your own life, how can you think about the time that you have here without pressure, but with perspective? But there is pressure, right? Because we are finite. So I want to play with this a little bit. I want you to imagine that you know, again, this is just an exercise, that December 31st is the end. What changes? Not necessarily what you wish you had done or what you regret. What rises to the top of your list? What is the most important? Is it how you are talking to people and engaging with them, or how you're handling frustrations? What feels super important and what becomes super optional? I think when we keep in the element of, no, you still probably have to go to work and pay your bills and pick up your kids from school. So if I still have to do those things and I don't get to empty my bank account and burn everything down, then you start to be like, okay, well, if I, so to speak, have to do these things, then maybe there's a way for me to do them with more fun. Can I add that Pippi Longstocking, Mary Poppins, merriment maker kind of energy to it? Can I enjoy it more? Maybe when you do this, you'll actually think maybe there is something on this list that doesn't need to be here. Maybe it'll become clear that there are things that you're doing that you don't want to do. I think what's mostly interesting about this idea is that most of the time we don't always necessarily want more. We just want the essentials. We want more. We need more words for alignment, honestly, because it's become so hokey. But that's what it is. We want to think about what our values are and then be doing things that match up with them. I think when we have these experiences and brushes with crises and near-death experiences, that we start looking at both sides, our beliefs and our actions, and we get worried that what we're doing doesn't match what we think we are. How we view ourselves doesn't qualify in real time. And then we also start noticing like how much of our life is happening on autopilot, how many things we do because we said yes once, maybe we didn't examine that decision, and then we just kept doing it. How many things we're doing to people please, and how much energy is really going towards stuff that wouldn't survive this time is real filter that we're looking at it through. And sometimes that is really the biggest information, not really what to add, but what to remove or how to do the things that we're already doing. Another thing that I think this viewpoint adds for us is that it makes our life feel more borrowed. Like we're seeing it through someone else's eyes. It gives us that bird's eye view, a third party objective perspective. That rhymes. Have you ever seen those movies like Parent Trap or Model Behavior with Justin Timberlake, where people swap lives? Not the ones where they're Freaky Friday'd and they're like, what is this? But the ones where they kind of choose it. Maybe they're twins. I feel like that's probably the only example where it works, where they get to choose it. But they're really excited to swap lives. And usually those movies involve people getting to trade places from rags to riches and vice versa. And someone who's never had money suddenly gets to luxuriate in decadence. And then someone who has been rich their whole life is suddenly like really excited about doing laundry and not having this overpacked schedule. Both of them really just because it's novel and new. So you can actually just pretend that you have swapped lives with someone else. Someone who wanted your body, your problems, your mornings, your house, your clothes, whatever. What would they notice? I was watching a movie and they were having this really hard time and they were complaining about all this stuff, and they came home and it was like one of those giant, it was like a mansion basically. And I laughed really hard because I was like, oh my God, you have no idea how good you have it, really. And then I stopped because I always do this. This is part of my brain's problem or solution or both. It's the best and worst thing about me, that I can't not see things from both sides. And I immediately thought, how many people would think that about me? This house that I don't think is my ideal, how many people in the entire world, probably the majority, would look at this house that I find so many problems with, and they would be so happy to come inside, to swap lives with me. That all the things in my pantry that I swear I can't use, they would look at as wonderful, nourishing food. That all the things in my closet I swear I don't want to wear, they would be like, I can't believe I have all these options. They would find so much joy in my home, in my life, in my opportunities, in things that I haven't felt gratitude for, that I've taken for granted. And that's really, I guess, what that's about, right? It's looking at your own life with new eyes and trying to see the good in it again. The novelty doesn't always have to be about completely changing your life. It's like changing your vantage point. When I talk about mortality awareness, which is really just being aware that we are finite, I don't think it really requires anything dramatic. When we broach the topic of self-love and self-acceptance, we ultimately want to get to the point of accepting our entire entity, our entire lives, and that includes our own mortality. And the healthiest, most successful, and most happiest people I know are people who incorporate the understanding of their own mortality into their daily lives, mission statements, ethos, personal development, and acceptance. I don't think mortality awareness needs to lead to fear. I think it's motivation and honesty. It helps us see where we are showing up with love and not just performing and doing things out of obligation and not on autopilot. It helps us stop treating these irritants like there are personality traits. Like, I'm just like this. This is annoying. And we can start playing with them and having the perspective as this is an opportunity. I get to do this. And if I'm going to do this, let me have fun with it. And it helps the small things stay small. We don't have to blow everything out of proportion. It gives you permission in this way to look at your life from another perspective, to remember all the things that you do have, to prioritize what is important to you and not feel the need to do that from an external vantage point. And you don't have to be reckless about it. You can do it in a grounded way. You get the permission to unschedule and simplify and look at the essentials for you based on your values and stop bringing and carrying things around that really don't feel like they belong to you anymore. And that's why I think that this is actually one of the most practical goal-setting tools that there ever was. And I think we need to use it, not just once a year, but often. So I said that there was a 4-step kind of method, and you don't have to have like a notebook marathon. You don't have to figure out everything. I just wanted to give you some sort of framework because it can be really frustrating when you hear something that feels potentially inspirational and helpful, but then you don't know what to do with it. So if you want some steps and you're feeling lost, here are some ways to do that. You can try step 1, just picking a container. And by that, I mean like the fictional endpoint. Do you want to utilize a 6-month endpoint, 1 year, December 31st, your next birthday? I don't know. Just say it once. That's enough. Step 2 is to just keep your real life. I mean, you're already going to do that anyway, but in this thought experiment, you want to do that too. So don't have these like fantasy resets. Like I said, don't imagine that you're going to just pick up and move and abandon your kids and your relationship and empty your bank accounts and tell everyone to screw off that you don't want to because you do want them in your life. You still have your obligations and responsibility. That's what keeps this exercise honest and different and unique. And then step 3 is just to kind of sit with it and notice it instead of analyzing it and judging it. I want you to start thinking about, what does this look like? When you get to the end of that endpoint, that container, whatever the timeline is, if you were to stay doing exactly what you're doing now, what starts to feel heavy? Think about, what would you want to be? How would you want to feel? What would you want to change? What would you want to edit? What would you want to release? What would you want to prioritize? What is the most important thing? And you don't have to have like one big priority. You can have a list. You can shuffle things around. You might even want to make a list of kind of how you're spending your time now versus how you wish you were spending your time in this thought experiment, and see how it's measuring up on both sides. Are you right now spending 80% of your time at work and you wish that friends were higher? You know what I mean? So like, look at what's realistically happening and be honest, and then look at what you wish was happening. Once you kind of look at that new outline of what you want to be happening, how you would reset, what kind of softens in you, what feels unfinished but in a way that's good. What's good about leaving things undone or releasing them? I think one of the things that's important about this is to let your body answer as much as possible before your brain jumps in. So maybe it would be really helpful to do this alone without distractions of like the TV and stuff. Maybe just have some music that's instrumental or something on. Maybe try to close your eyes and imagine things. Just try to get soft and somatic and body intuitive about it. You know what I mean? Don't try to judge the things that you're thinking about. And really don't lie to the lists either. You can also voice record yourself. There's so many different ways to process information. And I'm going to be recording a podcast about this next week about the way that I process things. But you can definitely, instead of journaling, voice record and then use the transcript. You can journal, you can meditate. There's literally like no right way to do anything ever. And that's part of this entire ethos. So step 1 was to pick the container, the endpoint. Step 2 was to remember that you have to keep your real life and responsibilities. Step 3 was to do all of this noticing and maybe the 2 separate sides of the list. This is like the emotional heavy lifting of the steps. And then the last step is to choose one big permission action step out of the data that you got in step 3. You don't have to do everything that you get from that list. You can start with one thing that you want to stop, simplify, savor, opt out of. And it also does not have to be forever. It can be for a week as a trial, just for now, whatever that means. You can try to live 1 week like time is real and see what happens, see what changes, see how you feel differently. You can even have different week experiments where you pull from the list and do different things. You can be like, okay, well, I'm going to prioritize this week. In February, I'm going to try to savor this thing that's important to me. In March, I'm going to try to simplify this. It's very difficult for us to try to overhaul everything all at once. It's almost impossible. So don't try to do it. You can't go from walking to running a marathon. It doesn't work like that. So I want you to just notice it first, use the data. Don't get super down about it. Understand that we all do this, all of us. No one is fully enlightened, truly. And then just pick one thing and figure out the logistical ways for you to do that. So really, I think that's probably step 5 is like, how are you going to do that? Are you going to schedule it in? Are you going to put alarms on your phone? Are you going to have to talk to people? Are you going to need to schedule a babysitter? What are the logistics of that? Because just choosing the permission step, the action, doesn't really mean anything unless you implement it and do the test. So that's like 4B or step 5 if you want. Okay, so I would love to hear how you felt about that, if you feel like that's helpful. I know that thinking about death can feel morbid, but it's just a part of life also. I want to remind all of us that we really don't need a crisis to wake up. The data is in about what happens when we have near-death experiences. So we can really use the information that we have around them to wake up ourselves before we have our own crises. You don't need to be behind to reassess. Being proactive is one of the best tools that we have at our disposal. And you don't need any sort of permission or marker of the calendar to value your time. This is just something that I've been thinking about. You can just start now, whenever you're listening to this, and it'll be with you here this year. We get to keep asking better questions and we get to keep making merriment. Remember that you have to feel good to do good, and report back with how this goes. I love you.